Mm. Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Live. I'm your host Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon, and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live, and there's also a PayPal, Patreon, crypto, and thanks button in the info box below the video. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcome back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel, so please share the show on Facebook and Twitter. Now, this show's been detached from the pre-show, so I'm actually going to do a shout-out to all of you who do support me on Patreon. So a massive shout-out to Rod, Twads Wazzle, Jason Hornsby, Christoph Fournier, John Travolta, JMails24, Unimento, M, Iron26, Endless, Flat Earth Sage, Golden McKinnon, Retro Bill, More Books, Cannabear, Bogey, Michael Kahn, John Kays, Patrick Gunnels, Banter, Will Brax, Mel B. Styles, Troy Shuker, Harry Blade, Mobile Max 777, Neo the One, Rob W, Reese Pound, Dal West Watson, Maria Nealons, Unbelievable Productions, Blue Ridge Ranger, The Real Gabster, Abraham Mohammed, Skeptic 936, Life is Short, Texas Mike, David Wayne Foster, and Dank. So another massive thank you to all of you for supporting me on Patreon. Links below if you did want to support me on Patreon. Now, we are joined by Arwin, 10th Man, Brian's Logic, Neil, Refracted Curvature, Flatsoid, the Adam Meakin, and a whole bunch of people in Discord. So welcome, one and all.
Hello,
Let's get it together, shall we?
So, good afternoon.
Howdy,
They get it together.
Hello.
I'm totally disorganized. I've got a very messy looking screen, so I'm going to sort that out while I ask a few housekeeping questions. So, any evidence of a physical geometric sphere edge? That's a horizon, formerly known as the curve of the Earth.
Would you require geometry for that?
Never seen one.
I think that's
Only
that's Brian's cue right now. Brian, that's your cue.
That went down well.
Cue for what? Well, I have to say,
He said the horizon question, Brian. That's your cue.
Brian's missing just as the horizons, as the geometric horizon's missing. So,
For the time being, Flatsoid, can you get close to your mic because you are actually sounding really faint? Can you say that once more?
I was saying, just like Brian is missing, the geometric horizon is missing.
Well, it's not so much missing as it never existed in physical reality and only ever existed in the maths after an assumption that Earth was a sphere. Well, something that 10th Man's recently brought to light was where they've changed. This came up as a conversation between my wife and I, and she was trying to fathom, like most people do, you know, the kind of why would they lie question, which I'm sure you're all going to groan when you hear that. But I started to answer and then question the way I was answering her. Well, that's not true either. Just take a step back. She immediately answered her own question by saying, to keep us under control. And I was like, yeah, that's exactly the answer that is standard fare in flat earth debate. We would say that's if somebody was insistent on knowing the why, well, to keep us under control, like most things, it's a control system. Okay, right, that goes without saying, and even my wife can recognise that. Not that I'm demeaning my wife in any way. I'm just saying she's not involved in this subject in any way, shape or form. But the point is, she was still asking about it as a cursory interest, right? And I started to describe to her what 10th Man described to me in the books from way back when, and indeed Brian has gone through some of these with us on the show, about what space used to be, and what, if you know that planete or plane means exactly that, the plane that we're living on, and you've got a good idea about how the old maps used to describe new worlds as they were described. And further to that, in our recent history, we've got third world countries being renamed as developing countries. Well, if you think about it logically, in terms of beyond what is obviously a control system, what is the purpose? Well, what's changed? And what's retained the same name but been given a different meaning? Well, a couple of things. Worlds, planes, planets, and space. Those are the things that have been reassigned. Well, but going back through history, I don't have to put my neck out very far to say we found new worlds in our relatively recent history. Now, given that we found new worlds in our relatively recent history, does it not make sense to say that, well, let's have a look at where those new worlds were found? Well, where were they found? Well, they were found out in space. But space was out towards the horizon in an area that was previously uncharted. That's what space was. Out towards the horizon. And what was being found there? New worlds. Okay, so what's space now? Well, space is outer space. Okay, well, what's that? Well, it's the sky vacuum. It's up there, where there's absolutely zero chance whatsoever of you finding ground and land and soil and dense stuff. Because it's the sky. So they say, the only potential to find any ground, the stuff you're standing on, is up there. Look up there. It's literally a magic trick. Don't look over here. Look over there. It's a misdirection. And what have they relabeled? Space. With the misdirection. And what is it that they, therefore, you can only assume, don't want you to find? Or don't want there to be any more found? Well, new worlds. That seems to be the crux of the why of the deception. Now, could it be that what we previously, in the last 50 years, called developing countries, have actually now developed and threatened the power of the existing hierarchy? Yeah, very likely, right? Well, it's probably a lot easier if you keep them underdeveloped, for the most part, keep them occupied, doing recycling, with BART, or whatever they call it. They send boatloads of to these developing countries, formerly third world countries. Yeah? You see where I'm going with this? So there's a certain aspect of asking where the curve exists. And it does exist in the mind's eye of the Western world, but probably doesn't exist on many third world, now developing countries. And the idea of third worlds being found out in space to later threaten your power is something that you might want to put a limitation on. And therefore, a sphere, where you point in all directions upwards towards the land that never will be found and can't exist because it's too dense, it's below you, it's on the floor. But no, tilt your heads towards the skies, ladies and gentlemen, because that's where you'll find the land, the new worlds, where we formerly found them out towards the horizon in space. Oh, I mean, and space is also up there as well. That's not the horizon anymore. That's now an Earth curve edge that you'll fall off. Anyway, there's my 2 cents on it as per my wife's my delivery to my wife yesterday about this subject.
Well, they also want you to be scared of space, outer space, in their model. There's always some scary thing coming from there, whether it be a meteorite or some solar flare or whatever. And it's subconsciously, it's going to have the effect that people should be scared of anything that's a new land or new world. You know, kind of thing. And they have you living on a circle mentally. And on that circle, in every direction, there's another part, like it's a sphere, but when you're looking forward, it's a circle right back to your feet. You know, when you if you make a line, it'll go right back to your feet. And all of that has been already discovered. There's nothing to see here. Shut up. That's about it. You know what I mean? That's what you get. So, And they make sure you can never go in the direction where there might be something different, which is, south of 90 degrees. They make sure you can't go there. They make it as difficult as possible. And if you do go there, they can make it so you don't come back if they want, or they can make it so difficult that you can go there, but you'll never get anywhere when you're there. Because they're making it so difficult to travel when you're actually there, even if you get past all the red tape. So, I mean, they're making finding anything new or making any progress impossible.
Right. Well, this was the original stepping off point for me and indeed Martin Leaker, or formerly Flat Earth British. I think he just goes by Martin Leaker now. But because of Math Powerland, who has just resurfaced in the last few days, so he disappeared for a fairly lengthy period of time, maybe a couple of years, and has now resurfaced and is as beautifully bonkers as ever, which is just fantastic. Anyway, Math Powerland's eccentricity aside, his shtick from the outset, and indeed his namesake, lends credence to what I'm suggesting. Not lends credence, but for him is his shtick. Which is to say that if you listen to what his name actually is, Math, Power, Land. So what's it about? Well, it's about making horizontal bent. It's about working with a flat plane and turning it into a sphere. That's all in the math. Where does this is where I'm going, by the way, in case anybody hadn't figured out that I'm wrapping this up from the original Earth curve question. Anyway, what's it all about? This is how I summarised it with my wife, which is why I'm quite flowy in this banter. Well, it's about the math. That's where the Earth curve exists. It doesn't exist in physical reality. You can't measure it, you can't view it, you can't put a ruler on it. Nobody's ever measured it. It requires a begging the question fallacy to assume it. So it does not exist. But where is it? Well, if everybody already knows they're on a sphere, how can you say it doesn't exist? Well, it only exists in the maths. Right, so it's all about the maths. Math. What about, what's the reason behind it? Well, my wife got this before I could get it out of my lips. It's about keeping us under control. So it's about power. It's about keeping power. Yep. And what are they keeping from you? Well, out in the formerly known as space, towards the horizon where the, quote, new worlds on the old maps were found, right? Well, that's what it's about. Land. Well, I think there was a lot more to what Math, Power, Land was talking about originally, and there still is. There's a lot of validity to what we can demonstrate in our recent history in terms of what worlds have literally been found. And now there's a kibosh on it, basically. Why? Well, because you'll come back on yourself, like Brian says.
His name says it all.
Well, if we look at what is south, right there, we're given two choices. It's either a large continent that's an ice shelf, or it's an ice wall that's going around us, right? This is what they want us to believe. We are never in a position, or even if you do put yourself into a position, they're going to make it as difficult as possible to validate any of that, right? And there's videos from years back, decades ago, back in the 50s, where you have military US, if I remember correctly, US military people on sunny beaches in Antarctica. But now they want you to believe it's just a big load of ice, whether you believe it's a continent or it's a perimeter, of a flat plain. Where's the sunny beaches gone? So they make it as difficult as possible to even know what that is. And I don't know. It's just they're not allowing you to ever. It's like they're not allowed to leave their house. It's that kind of a thing. You can go to the door, but it's going to be difficult because there's a tiger there. That's not their fault. Whatever. So they're making it difficult to just leave their house. That's how I see it.
Maybe, but we speculate. It's an interesting folly. But ultimately speaking, the overriding point is that the claim that there is Earth curve would be easy to demonstrate if it were true. It would be blatantly obvious if it was the case. And what we get from our opponents, mathematically literate or otherwise, is that it doesn't exist. There is no Earth curve. It's not measurable. In order to even infer that there is, you've got to assume that there is, and then work from there. Well, when you're working from there, you're always working with flat Earth elevation angle measurements taken from a plane, because that's the world we live on. So you're going to be back engineering your belief, and therefore begging the question fallacy of a sphere Earth, into angle measurements and so forth from a flat plane, to make people believe that the world is a sphere? Well, it's just to keep us well and truly under control. That's the whys and wherefores of the globe deception, in my humble opinion, as much as I can go through the historical deceptions of how they've come to pass and how they've evolved. So, there we go.
Well, last week's review video, pretty much the mathematician admitted it's assumed, and Eratosthenes didn't prove anything.
Or they're just like, we're ascribing an intelligence to them out of fear, because if the people that run this world ain't got a clue about what it is, then we're being led by ignorance and stupidity, and that's a little bit more scary to think than it's a conspiracy.
Couple of quick shout outs.
Well, my viewpoint.
Sorry, just one sec.
Go on.
Couple of quick shout outs. One to Godzilla, who says Nathan's late equals 4 more hours. No, it doesn't, but I was late starting the live show, which you probably won't pick up on if you're watching after the fact or you've just tuned in. Nevertheless, thank you very much indeed for the super chat. Really appreciate the support. Also, Elvis Kavovic, thank you very much indeed. Says, hey, is that Nathan? No, I'll start that again. Is that Neil in the intro singing What a Day? No, it's from Mad Max. Thank you for the super chat, Elvis. Go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, no, it's Mad Neil. Anyway, the sun's transit at the equator, the arbitrary line, versus what it does furthermost north and then furthermost south of the equator is 23.4 degrees. It takes a year to do that. So the solstice, the equinoxes, and so forth. So the sun is out of our view at 90 degrees, basically. All right. So how did they have this globe trick going? They got a positive 0 to 90, and then they got a negative 0 to 90 at the equator. So when you think about what the sun is doing and how much light it can cast during its transit through the solstices and equinoxes, then anything outside of that, okay, as far as we know, unless there's a second sun that we can't see, okay, you see where I'm going with this? That the Earth we have is, with the system, we need the sun to live and so forth, the cycles and all. It's there. It is. It's whatever the sun could do, be the outskirts or the perimeter of the plane we live on. Now they've got us thinking that, like you said, look into outer space. Okay, why? Well, because if you want control over people, you've got to create outer space. You've got to create evolution, Big Bang, chance. You've got to take the viewpoint of a creation, which would invoke a creator, out, because people will then challenge your power over them based on you're not the creator. What does the creator say about who I am, not who you say who I am? So it's all, at the end, it's all about control.
Indeed. Any evidence of a elevation angle measurement being acquirable from a curved baseline?
Well, let me go check if Neil deGrasse Tyson answers me. I'll be right back.
But didn't that guy in maths has conceded that you need a flat baseline to do this?
You mean Matthew Learns?
Yes, he did. Yes, he did. He not only did that, but he came on the show when he first came on and said a triangle is 390 degrees.
Okay, there's a couple of things we're going to cover today. Fortunately, now I've got all my sound working. So in case you're wondering why we're late, I just managed to neglect to change one setting in sound, and then that ballsed everything else up. So eventually I just decided to reset. Hence there's been an extra short show if you're watching this after the fact. Anyway, we've got one that's Michio Kaku, and the other one is, I believe, going to be a lot shorter, a minute long, which is from Righteous Force. So I've just read your comments. Says Eddie Bravo using Nathan Oakley / panel argument. So did you want to give us a heads up on what we're going to listen to, Righteous? He's still there. Is he gone? Oh, he's not even here. he's gone. Okay, well, we'll go in blind and hopefully this will be good. And if it's not, we'll blame Righteous Force. He's not here, so he can't moan.
It's the craziest thing ever. Flat Earth is the craziest thing, but guess what, dude? It's fucking flat, dude. And everyone is going to
No swearing.
find out eventually. It's all, no one ever gets into flat Earth and then turns back. You don't. It's like
That's not true. Sorry to criticise you, Eddie. There are plenty of examples of people who have turned back to the globe.
Santa Claus. The only thing that keeps...
Yeah, but that's
Oh, here we go.
That's an interesting point, isn't it? Why people turn back. So, with the exception of Ranty, which we would probably say had more of an inducement, a lot of it is back to the fear. A lot of it was, because I can't answer this question. It's not because they're convinced of the ball. It's just they can't convince themselves of the flatness. They can't prove it. So it's better to go back to that safe space. Tiger Dan, great example of it. Yeah, so much to disprove the ball, but because he couldn't get flight routes to match up on his map he was building of the flat Earth, when that failed, it was easier to go back to the ball for safety. Whether you disagree with the premises that brought you to the flat Earth or not, I think is a different matter. So I kind of agree with them a bit.
I would say no one ever went back. I would agree with Eddie Bravo there, because besides your man Tiger Dan, I remember him back in 2015. I think with him, he just wanted out of the topic, and that was the easiest way to do it. I think he just didn't want the hassle. And now maybe, obviously, he was making a map and all this kind of nonsense that he was pre-assuming a lot of stuff. Was very early days. He wouldn't have had the knowledge we have today or anywhere near it. But other than that, there's only 4 other people. Two of them were total liars. They were never flat earthers. They were pretending to be. And I caught them out. They were never flat earthers. They were only pretenders. They were ballers.
Let me expand on that.
Time.
Okay, so round about the time that YouTube discussed with not YouTube, but whatever Alphabet Group's representative was at the Congress meeting for YouTube, explicitly said that they'd have to do something about us, right? And they said, oh, well, the preferred content, the ones that are saying it's a ball, will be pushed to the top of the lists, and the tramp stamp will go onto the ones that aren't. Well, at that point, there was a couple of people who came out, and one conversion, who I'm sure you'll get to in a minute, Brian, or someone else, maybe Adam will, who knows. But that basically came out and said, oh, yeah, I was a flat earther. Then I found out how stupid it was. So they kind of muscled their way in like they'd been in this arena or done a single thing or, gone out advocating for flat earth or in any way made it public that they were a flat earther. Suddenly they were public as I was a flat earther with no background as being one. So they just sort of latched onto the fact that, oh, right, so if I'm an anti-flat earther, I'll be promoted. Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, well, it was just two ballers. I can't remember both their names. One of them went from being a Marine to leaving the subject. This is after he said he had stopped being a flat earther. And his reason for not being a flat earther was he said he found out just how big the world was, which showed he was totally full of it. And I pulled him on it some years ago, because the Earth being a flat plane means it's much bigger than in surface area than a globe. So that was a complete load of rubbish. But it don't matter. There was another guy then, he was another total lawyer some years ago, and everyone was laughing at him at the time. But there's only 2 people. Hang on, I'm getting there. There's only 2 people, and that's Jose and Ranty. Now,
Sean G.
Jose,
What, Sean G?
Yeah, that was Sean G. was one of the two.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
Sean G. was the guy who said. Sean G. was the fella who said to fight the flat Earth. He said, "I didn't realize how big the Earth was." Right, that's what he said. That was his excuse. So that was Sean G. But he don't matter. Him and the other lad were already a baller. But there's Jose and Ranty. Now, listen to this. Jose had a photograph that he said he couldn't explain, and all it was what I detail often, which is visual occultation. That was the effect in this photograph. Now, Ranty, the same exact effect is in the photograph, the Blackpool photograph. That's the same exact effect that Ranty said he couldn't understand. It must be a globe. This rubbish. Total lies. And the funny thing was that Jose came out when Ranty was saying this and said, Ranty's full of it. He said, look behind me. There's a 4-story building behind me, but because my house is in the way, it makes me look up at an angle where I'm only seeing the top floor, even though this building is at least twice the height of the house I'm in, he said. right? And he showed it with his phone. That was the very effect that was in the photograph that Jose said that he couldn't explain. So
he did it. I remember he did it with like a building with a lighthouse behind. I remember it.
Yeah, exactly. There was a wall that was a little bit higher than his eye line, and it took up half because of it, the angle of his eye line angle, then made him look about halfway up to the lighthouse. So he said, "Oh, it has to be a globe." It was a lot of nonsense. Jose was desperate at the time, and he knew there was money to be made and a business to be had on YouTube, and that's what he did. That's how I view it. But Ranty then took a similar route. So out of those four, with the exception of Tiger Dan, out of those four, two of them were already ballers. They were never flat earthers, and the other two saw cash signs on the opposite side. That's all it was.
Hold on.
So basically less than half a dozen conversions in total. Unless people can list them in the chat. Maybe there's a dozen, but, that's as many as we know.
Let me ask this question, Nathan. Is there anybody that's into the subject as deep as we are and has the knowledge that we have here on Flat Earth Debate? Got to go back to the ball. And I think that's what Eddie Bravo's getting at.
Yes.
Chris
Yes. Let me answer you. Yes, there is. Right. And you're going to hate me, all of you now, because I'm going to bundle everybody into the category we've just defined. So anybody who's in this subject who is an anti-flat earther, I don't need to rattle off a list, but feel free to do that if you want to list off our opponents in this particular pond, right? The anti-flat earthers. All of them fall under that category, Neil. That is to say, they've come here, they found out the information, and now they're just messing around, basically. Effing about, finding out. And what are they finding out? Well, how cognitively painful it is to brace against something that's factually true. Well, those are all the people in that arena. They're all flat earthers. That's why they got branded anti-flat earther, with the emphasis on flat earther. They know it's flat. All of our opponents know damn well it is. They just can't bear to accept it.
Can I maybe say something?
Yeah, go ahead, Flatsword.
Okay, let's just say, I'm going to take, for instance, Ranty and STST. They were supposed flat earthers before they came globers. I still believe that they think it's flat. The reason why I say that is because they've moved on from doing flat earth content because it's too painful for them. So they've got all the subscribers from going to the anti-flat earth side, and now they push other content, or now and then push making fun of the globe, of flat earth, because it's too painful for them. You understand? So they do know it's flat, but they have to fight for anti-flat earth side because it's giving them the money, as you said.
Maybe. It's disgraceful, really, to do that sort of thing just for the cash. I mean, there is a super chat link, PayPal, Patreon. I've got a GoFundMe going. So just bear that in mind. But on the other hand, disgusting. Absolutely disgraceful. Right, let's listen.
Smash the super chat for Nathan. And don't forget chocolate.
I mean, I've been asked this a lot, just like you, Nathan. If we really wanted to do this for money, we would just change sides. Think about it. Get how much? Hundreds of thousands of subscribers. But is it worth it? No.
Well, you'd have to lie
Can
to
you
yourself.
really just change sides? Flat side? You know that's an impossibility.
The ball Earth theory together is gravity. That's the only thing. But gravity's never been proven. Gravity's like, oh, gravity's been proven. Look, gravity. No, gravity. Like you pick some up.
Yeah, he's still he's not got. Obviously, in a 60-second clip, he's not going to overqualify like we do here at the cutting edge, right? So where he says ball Earth theory, obviously at that point, if it were me, I'd be overqualifying and saying, no, it's not a theory, although they claim it's a theory because they've hijacked science. And so it would go on and it would be lengthier and lengthier.
Good gravity. No, try doing that to a helium balloon. Then what? What is that? Helium balloon, an anti-gravity spaceship? What about a helium balloon? Can't explain that, can you?
Have we ever recreated?
Okay, so when go on.
So if you listen to, I'm sorry, someone else.
No, go on, Adam.
If you listen to his peers, it was quite a statement. It was gravity taking the mick. All of them just chuckle. Now, if any of them had anything, they don't do a chuckle. They go, blah, 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 let me download all my information and prove you wrong, Eddie Bravo. They didn't. They just chuckled. I would say at that point, you don't need to disseminate anymore because you put the onus on them. Do you know what I mean? You put the onus on them to challenge your statement that nobody has ever proven gravity. So that to move forward, you don't need any more because they need to come and say, yes, we have. Here it is.
Cool. But for the comment dwellers who go to these videos and immediately scroll through the comments and go, right, what's the response from somebody who's better educated in the defense of a ball than the people on the panel? And what they will come across is the homogeneous layers of gases are collimated such that they pour down upon the helium balloon. That is to say that the gases above are creating a differential that forces it to pop up. So it's actually the weight of the gases above forcing the helium balloon up. This is the globe claim of gas go down, go boom, boom. So that's what you get from an anti-flat earther or globe believer that's slightly well versed in this stuff, which is to say that the gases around the helium balloon go down, and that forces the balloon up with displacement, and then they'll go on to describe the effects of buoyancy, automatically presupposing gravity in their descriptions if they'd have to define them, which they may. If you try and say, oh, gravity isn't density and buoyancy, they go, buoyancy, check out this definition that includes gravity. And then they've won. Right, so let's rewind. Okay, helium balloon goes up, says Eddie Bravo. Cocky arsehole with a globe face on the panel goes, nah, the gases around it are going down. They're being pulled, the heavier gases that are around the helium are pulled down with gravity. Now, completely ignoring his statement that nobody's ever proven gravity, nobody's going to define it, but that's what your shortcut to a cocky globe-believing / anti-flat earther's response would be. Right, well, gas go down, go boom, boom, pulled down with gravity. Meanwhile, just so you've got the full response, after this smart aleck rebuttal, that gases are poured down from the sky where they're not produced. Gases are produced at ground level. They then come out of the ground and disperse into the area of volume that they've got to fill, which is already pressurized. Why is it already pressurized? Well, because it must be contained in order to be pressurized. Now, because it comes out of the ground and has to disperse between other gas particles, it can take a little bit of time to work its way up. But up it will work because that's what dispersion is. It's a law of nature, entropic law. So all gases are going to be produced in a sufficient quantity. We're not talking about fringe cases and gases being produced around the, I don't know, ionization of some lightning strike. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the prevailing gases that we experience in our quote-unquote atmosphere, sphere-shaped air, assumed to be in a sphere shape with gravity pulling it all down. No, gases are produced at ground level and then go up. Now, in the case of water, that cycle with the gases going up then has a phase change to bring them back down as rain. Now, beyond that layer with that cycle that must have gas pressure to achieve in the first instance, there's other cycles that are going on, but all of them have the prerequisite requirement of a contained system in order to do any of it. Meanwhile, the gases are all going up. That's the point. Should you get some smart aleck rebuttal from some globe-believing numpty who thinks that gas go down, go boom, boom like solid bonded bouncy balls, as asserted by a PhD clown who goes on YouTube by the name of Thunderfoot, who literally poured bouncy balls into a fish tank and asserted that that's how gas behaves, with the Boltzmann formula to back him, saying gas go down, go boom, boom. Utterly, ironically stupid from somebody that's supposed to be a man of physics. Nevertheless, gas doesn't go down. It expands in all directions at a high velocity in whatever vector it's going until it collides with something. Now, it's highly likely to collide with another gas particle if it's already entering a pressurized system, which we do have. Ergo, we must have containment in order to have the gas pressure and in order to see the effects of gases being produced at ground level and making their way up in defiance of gravity, to conclude the point. There is no gravity. Not all things go down. Some things, like gas, go up when they're produced at ground level and disperse into the available pressurized system that must have containment.
Well, that's why I always make the point that objects weigh more in a vacuum. That ends everything for them. It ends the whole heliocentric model. They can't. Objects have to weigh less in a vacuum for their power line to exist.
in science?
Neil deGrasse Tyson, but he'll even tell you. He's like on. There's a famous video. He goes, "Well, when you talk about gravity, we don't know."
What is gravity?
You have no idea. Okay, next question. You start asking, like, what it is.
Sorry about the music over the top of it. Whoever's trimmed this out has decided, like with all TikTok videos, very, very irritating. The ADHD generation obviously needs crazy music over the top of people talking so that it'll keep their attention.
I don't know.
The theory. It's a theory that's
find
been...
it interesting.
There we go. That's that. Very good.
Yeah, Eddie Bravo needs to pay a lot more attention to flat earth debates. I like Eddie Bravo, but he needs to pay more attention.
Who are you, his boss?
Well, no, it's like this, right? He just ended it there by saying, was it him that was saying there it's a theory? Was that him saying that at the end?
Yes.
About gravity?
Yes, it was, yeah.
It's not a theory.
You covered that at the beginning.
It's not a scientific theory, and it's not a scientific law. No such thing as scientific laws. The scientific theory is supported by scientific hypotheses that have been proven through scientific method. Gravity is not. There is no hypotheses put forward by Einstein, Newton, or anyone for gravity. It's the most unproven, scientifically unproven thing in the world. I want to say that. I want to say it in a layman's term. Go on, Adam. I see you want to say something.
Oh, just on that theory, I think in this case, he's using it in the colloquial sense and in the same sense that NDT uses it. I think anything that he's saying that he can challenge someone like that, I wouldn't critique him. He's not saying stupid things. He's maybe not got the detail, but would he ever get a chance to discuss it with NDT properly if he's going to be fully tooled up? I think him sitting there and going, it's a theory at him it's critiquable by us, but when I watch stuff like that, it's pleasing. It's pleasing that stuff's out there. Somebody's up in his grill.
Exactly. It's gone. When people go out on a limb and they're in a position to do so like this, it is easy to critique them. But just imagine you doing that. You'd be sweating bullets, right?
Yeah. You'd get about 800 words a second, wouldn't you? It would be
against NDT.
Yeah, if I was in his position, you would exactly. You'd be going 800 mile an hour. You'd probably say 15 things you didn't need to. I don't sit and look like that.
Can you mute, please, Flatsoid, causing audio chaos?
Trying to share screen, but yeah.
Okay. Do you want to get through what you want to do, Flatsoid? Because at the moment you're causing a bit of chaos. But if you want to do it now, we can then hopefully move on. What you got up? You are sharing screen, by the way.
I had to unmute, so I was just. Can you see my screen there?
Yes, we can.
So this is the latest thing I'm trying to ask the Globers. Since it's a closed system and they like to strawman us to show us the container, I'm going to do the same. Because their Earth is classified as a closed system. So they have to show us their physical barrier, and then they have to explain how they let astronauts.
Right on. Yeah, I agree. It's their
You're
burden to
breaking
prove.
up, or am I have a bad connection?
Yeah, but we got the gist of what he was saying, so that's cool. Hopefully he'll go back on mute just so he doesn't cause any audio chaos when he comes back. But yeah, exactly. It's their burden to prove. It's not our burden to prove. It's theirs. So therefore, okay, you say it's a closed system, gravitationally closed. Okay, show us gravity, and when we define it accurately as a fourth dimensional space-time bending that's not a force, you won't be showing that providing any containment. So what's next? Oh right, well it's a pressure gradient. Yeah, you're kicking the can down the road won't change the fact that you've got a gas pressure gradient, which requires pressurization. Go ahead, Neil.
Hold on. If they got a closed system, then how did they get to the moon? And how was there supposedly things on Mars taking pictures? You know, the little helicopters they got there?
Yeah, but Neil, I know you're kind of asking those questions in a kind of a joking fashion, but they never did any of those things. I know you know they never did, but they never did any of those things. They're not even questions. That's the point. What they did was they tried to make a joke out of somebody asking them how can you have gas pressure without a container? They try to make a joke about that. They laugh at it and hand wave it away because they cannot deal with that. That can't happen within
building your
power.
online business.
Sorry.
Yeah, but that's look. I'm gonna keep saying it. I don't care if you get sick of it. I'm gonna keep saying it. Objects weigh more in a vacuum. That is the end of that. And until everyone realizes that, I'm going to keep saying it. There's no way around that for them. That ends their model completely.
Over.
Oh, I thought this was something else.
Describe to you the first law of thermodynamics. The context was, we're going to study a system. That's our thermodynamic system. And for all our purposes, you can imagine that to be some amount of ideal gas trapped inside this piston and cylinder combination. The gas.
Okay, so this is a few various university lectures that I've gone and gathered up together, and I think this is a compilation of them all. I will put a link to this if you just want to shove it in globe believers' faces just for the fun of it. When they say that space is real, just tell them, no, it's a second law of thermodynamics violation. Here's the link to the video. Thank you very much, Divergent Droid, for posting this.
Gas has a certain pressure and a certain volume, and we represent that by a point in this diagram. That defines the state. That's called the state of the gas. We want to look at bulk macroscopic properties, of which pressure and volume is a complete pair. That's all you need. I think I reminded you that you don't need a third axis for temperature because we have this equation PV equals nRT. So if you know.
So PV equals nRT, you'll hear often mentioned on the show because of the V, the volume.
P and V, you don't need temperature as another variable. That's called the equation of state. You can use this all the time. Whenever the gas has got a pressure and volume, feel free to use PV equals nRT. I take a box and I put some gas molecules on one side, and there's a partition holding them in that side. Then I remove this partition and I wait a little bit, then I know the gas fills up. Now that's like perfume leaking out of the bottle. Hot and cold, when mixed, will never separate back. Gas fills up on one side, and there's a partition holding them in that side. Then I remove this partition and I wait a little bit, then I know the gas fills up.
Okay, so what this gentleman is explaining is that if you have a gas in a pressurized system, and you, in this case, remove this barrier, then the gas will fill the rest of the volume that is available to it. He says the gas fills up. Yeah, fills up the space available to it. It's the V in PV equals nRT, the volume. So the gas will fill whatever volume it has available to it. Ergo, if the sky was a vacuum, the gas we breathe would fill that available volume, and we'd all be dead. Because gas fills space. And what do you know? They claim there's 10 to the minus 17 torr vacuum above our very heads. Gas would fill it instantaneously. We'd have never have developed gas pressure in the first place if the sky was a vacuum. Outer space is fake. It's debunked by entropy law, the second law of thermodynamics.
Now that's like perfume leaking out of the bottle. hot and cold, when mixed, will never separate back into hot and cold. A gas, that genie that got out of the bottle won't go back. This gas that came out won't go back. There's a whole lot of processes which we call irreversible.
The irreversible process that he's describing would be a gas particle in a heliocentric world, that's a ball Earth in a sky vacuum, coming out of the ground and then never coming back. The irreversible process of entropy would be to say that the gas would leave the ground and go into space. Would it come back down? Would it reach a point called the Kármán line and go, sod natural law, I'm going to eat cakes and fall back down like a bouncy ball? No, gas doesn't behave that way. Entropy debunks outer space.
They never seem to happen backwards. They only happen
never
forwards.
happens backwards. That's to say that...
And we cannot live...
That is to say, the gas isn't going to come back the way it came from. If it's going upwards, directly up from the ground position, when it leaves the ground in a heliocentric world that doesn't yet have gas pressure, it doesn't go back up and come back down. It's not like a solid traversing gas, like we have with balls when we throw them up in the ground, from the ground. What goes up must come down. Now that applies to a solid traversing gas. In this case, a gas, it will go up and keep going up. It won't go in reverse. This irreversible effect would leave Earth never developing gas pressure if it was a sphere in a vacuum. Ever. We'd have never developed life in the heliocentric world. Ever. Wouldn't have happened.
It's got elastic collisions.
Yeah, well, it's that within the contained system that you must have in order for the collisions to happen. But I'm saying at the very first signs of gas production, for the whatever reason in the heliocentric model they would bullshit about to say this is how the first gas particle came out of the ground. Okay, it comes out of the ground, sods off at thousands of miles an hour towards the sky, and then what? Well, that's it. That's the process. Not reversible, you say? Never to return? All right, how did we develop gas pressure? How are we breathing gas pressure then? Because every single subsequent gas particle that ever came into existence would come out the ground, and in this irreversible process, travel in a high velocity in whatever vector it's travelling, never to return. The chances of it colliding with another gas particle, absolutely zero. The chances of it falling down go boom boom like solid bonded bouncy balls as asserted by Thunderfoot Clown, absolutely zero. This irreversible law of nature would dictate that outer space is fake.
List all of them.
I will take this opportunity to list one second law of thermodynamics violation, which do we want to hear Nathan from the past? Might be wrong. Could be the notion that we have a sky vacuum. I'm just going to be parroting off stuff I've just said. Okay, so thank you very much. I've put a link to that earlier, and I'll share and tell Nathan Oakley 1980 sent me. Anyway, there's a link to it. If you wanted it, it's in the chat. Are we going to have time to cover
John had a comment.
Go ahead, John.
John had a comment on the tail of yours.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just saying that the idea that mass attracts mass is contrary to the second law of thermodynamics. That's why.
Yeah, mass doesn't attract mass and hasn't been claimed to for 108 years.
But that's what's required here, Newtonian gravity, for this supposed gas to go boom boom, because that behavior doesn't sit with geodesics. They don't claim that gas is doing this over a geodesic. It's the whole system that's doing it. They can't go into the small detail of the gas behavior. But fundamentally for this, they've got to invoke Newtonian mass attracting mass.
Indeed.
Well, yeah, exactly, because what they do is Einstein starts with it all already there. So he didn't have to address, that I'm aware of, gravitational accretion. So he starts with it all already there, and he gives them all how it all works. But it's all already there. He didn't have to start off with how it got created. And how it got created is what he threw out the window within that model, which is a force of attraction between what they call masses. And I'm going to say it again, objects weigh more in a vacuum. That's the end of that. They can't weigh more within that model. They have to weigh less. because they require gravity to be a force. So 1 second, John. I'll be fast. They require gravity to be a force of attraction between what they're calling masses, which is a mass of air within their model, and the mass of a globe Earth that it's being pulled down to. They need that for there to be gas pressure, a gas pressure gradient, and all the gas not have it dispersed immediately into a sky vacuum. But they don't have it, and vacuums prove it. Go on, John, sorry.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, but the idea, because with mass, you should be able to replace the word gas, right? And say, does gas attract gas? That's not how that works, Like the whole idea is just contradictory to what we experience.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but this is the thing. Go on, sorry, Nick.
I was just going to say that was exactly what Flatside said earlier, right? We could have elastic collisions. Well, the descriptions of elastic collisions flies in the face of the claim that they attract each other. Well, then they're not experiencing elastic collisions then, which is true. The 108-year out-of-date mass attracting mass when gravity's bending pseudo-force space? Or do we have elastic collisions? Yeah, we do. The gas isn't imparting or losing any energy when it collides with the walls of the container or with other gases. That's what an elastic collision is. But if you're going to then say, well, it's a mass, so it's attracting the other mass. Oh, right, so we get pools of gas, puddles of gas, because they're all attracted. No, they're not attracting to each other. Quite the contrary. They might encounter each other, but they bounce immediately off.
Law, it literally goes in the face of what they claim.
Right.
Well, the weight of their atmosphere, that's a linear downward vector to the air they're claiming that we breathe. The weight of that creates the pressure, the gas pressure at surface level. And that it's given weight by the force of attraction towards the center of the mass of a globe Earth. That's their claim. So there has to be a linear downward vector, which means it has to add weight to objects when the object is in air. When the object is in a vacuum, that means the object has to weigh less within that paradigm. Objects weigh more in a vacuum.
Well,
there is no way out of it.
Though, to make that claim about atmosphere, you have to accept a false premise first before they can say that objects would weigh less in a vacuum. Like they've already accepted the false premise that mass is attracting mass to give them weight in that description, right?
Yeah, but it takes that away. That's why I go straight to it. It's the fastest route to ending it. This takes it away completely. Because mass is not attracting mass within that paradigm, and it can't be in reality, because objects would weigh less in a vacuum if it was. It still has a weight, but the weight of the air the weight of their atmosphere is taken away within their paradigm when they mentally put that into their paradigm. Right, that means it has to weigh less. The chair has to weigh less in a vacuum, but it doesn't. The chair weighs more because air and gases do not have a linear downward vector. Their vector is in all possible directions all the time.
Right,
not linear downward.
Exactly, whereas gravity is down. Weight, as they're saying, the weight of the atmosphere, that's down.
That's exactly.
It has to be more down. Sorry for that question.
I'm saying exactly. If it's got elastic collisions, it's literally just going to bounce away from it. How do you get a weight reading if it doesn't push on having weight pulling down? It just literally gets pressure and by.
Yeah, there has to be a biased down vector to air. To the air we breathe has to be a biased down vector at all times. And the fact that objects weigh more in a vacuum destroys that. Because it takes it away completely. They don't have a gas pressure gradient. They have no force to give them an atmosphere then that would mean none of it could exist. No one could breathe. None of it could exist. It's all false. There isn't mass attracting mass, because if the globe was a mass, then the within their paradigm, then their atmosphere has to be a mass as well. So mass is attracting mass, giving them a gas pressure gradient so everyone can breathe and live on a globe. But they can't breathe and live on a globe if that is not, in reality, that's not real. Well, if mass is not attracting mass, which is proven it's not within the vacuum, there is no way around it for them. It takes away all of the heliocentric model. And it's such a simple thing, but they won't address it because they can't.
Right on. Right, even though we started a little bit late, we're going to end a little bit early. So with that, I'm going to say if you are watching this on either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley Programming Streams, then do stay tuned, as there will be an after show to follow. Unfortunately, though, if you are watching live, this is where we bid you farewell. So a massive thank you to all of you who smashed the super chat, including Retro Bill. I should really do these shout-outs before I end the live show, so let's do that. Okay, a couple of quick shout-outs to Godzilla37, who says, don't end the show yet. You never know. After 7 years, it could be those extended hours the globe finally gets proved. Yeah, you know that's not going to happen, though, don't you? So that's not the case, Godzilla37. But thank you very much indeed for the super chat. Really appreciate the support. Also, shout out to Retro Bill, who says, yes, Gord, but how many extended hours are you talking about? I just know there's a load of people. There we go. After another 8 years, it'll be worth it, Bill. Okay, thank you very much, fellas, for all the super chats. Really do appreciate the support. But once again, if you are watching this on either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley Programming Streams, do stay tuned, as there will be an after show to follow. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I will see you all in the next video.
What a lovely day!